segue into the second kind of phase of the video that really stood out to me.
Mm.
And it was effectively after Kevin built up some momentum in his career. He had now become, who we and what we know as Kevin Hart. He humorously talked about the moment, and I actually want to throw this in, Garen, because um, in the video,
Man.
he talked about the moment. So he had been grinding, building his career, doing the clubs. He'd moved to LA. Things were not popping. All this investment in time and energy. He broke, barely scraping by.
Mm-hmm.
But he remembers the single moment when it all changed. And the thing about the moment that stood out that he made really clear is he was ready. So even in his reflection, when Steven asked him, "Hey, so Kevin, what about I was ready for it. I
Mm.
was ready for it." He had mentioned being there for Cat Williams' moment like a
Yeah.
few months earlier, and he was sitting there like, this is his moment. Like it all changes for him after this. Garen, do you have a moment?
Well, you know what? Let's clear it up. From what I understood, it seems as though he had a conversation with Cat, and Cat told him about that moment, and
He
then
was
he
in the
was
audience. He was there.
an audience. He was an audience, but remember, it was only after Cat had that moment, like things started to happen. So
Yep.
Kevin wouldn't have known that that was the moment. Cat wouldn't have known that that was the moment. It was after all of those things started to happen, the different movies and all that stuff that he got into, he could look
Mm,
back and see the moment.
mm,
I I really am happy for them, and I do see those moments in slow motion. Like it's beautiful to watch, knowing in hindsight what happened next. You asked a question about me recognizing the moment, brother. I think that we all will go through it in a similar fashion because what we think is a moment may not be the moment, right? There may
mm,
be a spike. Um, Take for instance, I was speaking to a client here the other day. She's an attorney, and she talked about all that she has amassed right now, and she's going through some trying times right now, and she wants to hold on to what she has, and she's just like, Gerren, man, if I lose this, I'll be really upset. I'll be really upset, she says. And I mentioned you actually, not by name, right? But I mentioned you, and I said, a buddy of mine, he doesn't hold on to things, right? He receives things and he lets them go. He receives and he lets them go, and I have to pay attention. If I blink too long, I may not remember what he had last, right? And I said to her, I said, if you're holding on to these things so much and you think like that's the pinnacle of your career, you're not even allowing God to do like more. You think like that's it? That's it? And she's just like, Garen, you don't know how hard it took me to get here. And I'm like,
mm.
I understand. And she's like, if something happens, I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to feel I'll have to move away, she says. And I'm like, oh. I said, man, if you are so connected to this thing right now, like God can't do amazing things in you, man, or through you, and she's still working through that.
Mm,
So to the point of the question about the moment, I truly believe, man, that it's going to happen where we'll be able to look back and see ourselves like this is the moment. Here's the thing. You mentioned that Kevin said that he was ready. The kind of work that we're talking about doing, James, that preparation, that readiness, I think is slightly different from the readiness that Kevin may have spoken about. Maybe, maybe, maybe.
mm,
But as I listened to that portion of the video, I thought about my readiness, and I thought about my wobbles, and I thought about that statement that Myron Golden says, where he says, "Your time will come. Either you'll be exposed, or you will be." I forgot the other E word, but kind of like you like step up, right? And I don't want to be exposed. I want to be ready. I don't know. Those are the thoughts that came to me as I watched the video and that portion of it. You, sir.
Yeah, man. Obviously there's a few moments in life that I reflect back on and realized that while the pivot didn't happen at those points, it was definitely the setup for the pivot, right? And there's something I've grown to kind of embrace, and it's this idea of sand shifting under my feet. We've
Sure.
all been there. We're comfortable. Things are going well. We believe all of our hard work has translated into momentum, and we're feeling good about the direction we're generally heading. And then all of a sudden things will start to happen, things outside of our control, things we couldn't necessarily predict, maybe decisions from the past coming back and not looking as good as they once looked.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you realize the winds and the tides are changing. You realize that the sand under your feet is not as stable. And I've come to see those moments as the cur. Mhm. Let me say it this way: it's very difficult to get somebody to move when they're comfortable.
Hmm.
It's much easier to get somebody to move when they feel like they're no longer in a zone that's welcoming, or they have no other choice.
Yeah.
And so I've
Yeah.
started to, in my mind, almost like read the winds, right? Read the winds and start to say, okay, hmm, it's no longer summer. I can see the leaves changing. I can see the leaves falling off the tree. Let me get prepared for whatever comes next, because I feel the sands are shifting.
Yeah.
And so I distinctly had one in the past 2 or so years now, where, and I think I've told this story before. I was in an online meeting with the company I was working at, sitting in my home office, no issue. Um, but the
Mm,
topic of the meeting changed. And somebody made some comments, and it was hypercritical of some of the work we were doing and stuff my team and I had put in months worth of effort.
yeah.
And which, again, that's not the first time that's happened. So I was like, okay, it is what it is. I'll manage it post call and what have you. But on that call, that comment started to create a unique momentum, a tumbling, if you will.
Yeah.
Questions now being asked, and things that had been done before. Wait, why did we do that? Hey, tell me about that. And these are things that everybody on the call I had spoken to personally about. And I was wearing my Apple Watch, and all of a sudden that thing starts buzzing,
Yeah.
buzzing, buzzing. And I look down, and it had heart rate warning. I'm physically sitting down. I'm not running there. So when my heart rate is at a level where my watch is telling me, "Hey, buddy, calm down,"
Yeah.
I recognized in that moment, this place is
Stand.
no longer for me. I
Hmm.
was at the top of my career professionally, multinational company, billions of dollars in revenue, all of that. I was the S level VP, financially at the top of my career. All of the things that people work so hard for. And then all of a sudden that day, I realized this isn't for me. This is not where I belong. And I realized that moment, even though nothing happened, it went another year or whatever, before I ultimately exited. Um, I look back at that moment as the beginnings
Shifting
of that
sand.
shift. And I remember leaving that call, I had my moment wrestling with God. I was so mad at God to say, look, I'm a believer. I have faith. I read my Bible, you know, um, raised the right way, believe the right way, study. Like, I really, really try to learn the character of God as much as I can.
Yeah.
How is it that I could be so fragile after all of that, that the comments of some men and women on a screen could send me into a tailspin physically, not mentally, physically, meaning I couldn't even control my physical with my mental focus. I was fine. Brain, okay, I was fine. But my body was like, no, sir, no, you're not. And I went on a journey after that,
Mm-hmm.
where I challenged God to prove to me. that believing in you can not only help me become more intellectually stable, but physically stable. I was on blood pressure medications. It was uncontrolled. They pushed up to the highest levels of some of those medications, and I'm still crossing my fingers every time I'm going in for a doctor visit because I'm afraid they're going to tell me, James, we can't get it. We can't get it under control. Right. So to go from that, I challenge that. You prove to me, prove to me that if I keep believing, this thing is going to work out.
Mm,
You're going to allow me to gain control of my physical body. And I went on that journey, man. And so whenever I decided to exit or whenever the exit happened, now, man, I'm coming out with, yes, with some with at least a feeling of some boldness, I'll say, quote unquote. Of course, it's scary and there's a lot to be figured out. But I can tell you, Garen, I wasn't surprised because
mm,
I looked back on that moment and knew that from that moment, God was preparing me for something that was down the road, but He wanted me to start packing my bags because it
mm.
was going to be time to move on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. That's that triggered okay, remember our Greece trip?
Mm. Mhm. I do.
Oh my
I
God.
do.
That was, I don't want to call it the last best trip ever, right? But it was a heck of a trip. And we enjoyed it. Our families, our friends, we enjoyed it. But when I got back, that's when a big shift in our company. Okay.
Yep.
I remember that, right? And that even before then, well, yeah, no doubt, yeah. Before then, I was being a brand ambassador for my employees, doing my best to negotiate the best deal possible for our team moving forward. And we couldn't come to an agreement. This is one of my anchor clients. And man, when I got back from that trip, that's when the hammer was dropped. And that was kind of around the same time where I was talking to God and I raised my hand up from underneath my cover saying, God, I give it all to you. Like I submit my business and everything to you. And I pulled my hand back down. Oh man, things started to happen, brother. And and from there, things just started to just continue to, you talk about shifting sand. And I mean, you heard with each client that shifted, you guys got a text. And it's like, yo, God, what's going on? I mean, I submitted to you. Like, what's this? And this is happening.
Mm.
Um, and it's prompted me to pivot. But even when I was trying to skirt the lines and do multiple things at once, God was like, I said, no, brother. you know, Give me some more of that. Give me some more of that. And it's like, yo. So it was only when I committed, and I'm still in the process. No, I've committed, but man, the sand is still like, it's still wet. The foundation is still wet. It's being formed. It's solidifying, but it's still wet, man. Um, and to your point where you said where you like challenge God, I'm learning to continue even as I step on wet concrete because I know that it's forming. It's no longer sand, like it's forming. Um, Man, this is a journey, bro. This is a journey. Which part of Kevin Hart's uh, video we're thinking about? Like, what does this relate to?
So this is still on the path, right?
Um,
The path. What does the path look like, right? In his moment,
for the
he
moment,
had that moment where it really propelled him forward. And
yeah,
again, I figured you would say that moment because as an outsider, as an observer of the story that is
yeah,
unfolding around you, man, that was the beginning of the change. And let's be clear on this. In many cases, unlike what Kevin said, and this is one of those ways I think our stories are different than his,
mm,
that moment was the beginning of the removal. It started to extract
right,
an
yeah, yeah,
old life.
yes. It
It
wasn't
started
the
to It was taking everything that we became comfortable in and
Yep.
got to
Yep.
move it on. Because if I'm going to take you from here to here,
Yeah.
you can't bring that stuff. Garen, if it, just let's just play this out. If I stayed in corporate America and you still had
Yep.
all the client, where would we be right now? Would we
In the
be
world.
having this conversation? Would we be having this conversation?
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no. I barely could
Would
have got
would
hold of you on your journeys, man. You were all over the world, right? You were,
and I still am, but I
you were,
cannot.
right? But
But because I now lean into purpose,
yeah,
I can choose,
yeah,
right? And so we have an opportunity to spend this time sharing this with the audience because we are two people in transition.
yep,
But it's because the extraction process is just clearing out all that unnecessary stuff. And that's a piece of this I feel like so many people miss. To the point
mm,
you made about your lawyer friend that's holding on, holding on, holding on. If you hold on too tight, and this is the lesson my parents taught me early, if your hands are like this, how are you going to
mhm,
receive any blessing?
yeah. I thought about all of that, man. Yep,
How are you going to receive anything when your hands are like this? Like, yes, there's stuff we work hard for, but if we do this, can't we be open to better? Can't we be open to more? Can't we be open to new? And it's just something again, it's just a simple thing my parents taught me growing up, but it's always stuck with me. So that's why things come and go, and I try not to get too attached to anything
yeah,
because at the end of the day, it's all wind. It all blows, man. And I gotta let it go where it goes because it should not define where I
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah, yeah,
so 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 that's to that point, V, like thank you for sharing that reflection. And I see your brain is continue to
yeah.
work thinking through that.
Yeah, we could, yeah, we could, yeah, we could.